and welcome to the Empowered Curiosity podcast. Today we have got holistic psychologist Janine Kreft on the show, and so as you can imagine, we are going to talk about emotions. Emotions can impact everything from your physical health to, yes, of course, your business. We discuss just how powerful this connection can be in this conversation with Janine. She shares her recent experience with a pain flare in her neck and shoulders, and we use that as a jumping off point to explore the metaphor of the spine, of the body as being the storyteller of our life, and how important it is to honor our own energy. Navigating intense emotions such as fear and anger can be challenging, especially with cultural conditioning at play. I share the concept of hwabyong, which is a Korean term that translates to anger disease, and how that has shaped my own family's expression of anger. We also discuss the importance of setting boundaries, particularly in the realm of social media, and how learning to trust our awareness can lead to greater self-acceptance and growth. We wrap up our conversation by delving into the healing power of creativity and the significance of authenticity in our personal and in our professional lives. Janine Kreft shares her insights on how compassionately alchemizing our emotions ripples out to improve our relationship with ourselves, our business, and beyond. A little bit more about Janine is that she is a holistic psychologist and mental wellness coach. She offers services around the globe, and she's passionate about energetics, consciousness, and facilitating healing for folks. I really hope that you enjoy this episode. I had such a great time getting to know Janine. You are definitely going to be hearing her back on the podcast because it was just so easy to talk with her. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today I've got Dr. Janine Kreft. This is the very first time we're getting to meet. I'm really excited to just
I love it.
dive into conversation. But our connection point is my dear friend, Lindsay Locken. She's been on the podcast a bunch of times. I've been on hers a bunch of times. And I was asking her, is there anybody that you think I need to have on my show? And she was like, Janine, go talk to Janine. So we get to thank Lindsay for connecting us, and just even in the first couple minutes of chatting before we recorded, I'm like, oh yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to talk about the body, the nervous system, people pleasing, business, all the fun things. So welcome to the show.
So excited to be here.
Yeah. So I want to start out because we started chatting, and then I was like, oh no, we need to save this for the podcast.
Record.
Yeah. So we were just sort of talking about that, a really interesting interplay between fear and anger. So I'd love to just have you dive in and just give us a little bit of context for how that's been showing up in your life lately, and why that's been such a interesting space for exploration for you.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because, I had thought I had healed this people-pleasing thing down or whatnot, and I just continue to be humbled to more learning experiences. So recently, why it came up for me is I was having what I call right now a pain flare, but very intense pain in my neck and shoulders. For a little context, I do have scoliosis. It's categorized as severe, and I've had it since I was 5. So to me, that's all just interesting. Very interesting, energetic diagnosis there. But there was no specific overt trauma event or physical event that would have led to this much pain. It was 4 weeks of just very intense, where I was desperate to try all the things, acupuncture, rolfing, somatic massage, just anything to get it moving. And as I was working with my personal coach on it, I was getting clarity about how much I tend to resist expressing any sort of anger, frustration, disappointment, intolerance to things. And I get there's something about, I've done so much work and training and so many different modalities that it's almost like I can justify to myself anything. And kind of try to bypass that anger experience for what I thought was jumping straight to neutrality. It's okay. I get why they're choosing this, etc. Because it wasn't anything
Mm.
overt that you would be like, oh my God, you're being abused or something like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it was really just, I get that currently in the current state of the world and energies, we're collectively being called to really behave congruently with your energy.
Yes.
And I get that this was a call that I was out of alignment. I need to step in to having a backbone, having a spine, not tolerating certain things just to honor me.
Mm.
And so in service of thinking I was neutral, I really get that I was really down in more of like a numbness, defeated, a much lower frequency,
Mm-hmm.
and the energy is going to go somewhere. And so
Yeah.
to me, it was going in my body.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's so like, first of all, like the metaphor of the spine is so
Yeah.
interesting to me. I mean, I spent the first, decade plus of my career as an acupuncturist. And what I learned from that practice is really the body as the storyteller of your life.
Yeah.
And it's trying to communicate through particular signs and symptoms. And it doesn't have any other form of like language other than like pain, discomfort, you know, just sensation in the body.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's just such an interesting thing there. Are you okay if I like ask some questions
Please.
to like probe a little bit?
Yes,
Sweet.
please. Yeah.
So as soon as you said that it was your spine that was affected, the two meridians that I think of in particular, and this is going to relate back to like people pleasing and stuff, I'm sure. The two meridians that I think of is the bladder meridian,
Okay.
which runs from the like inner canthus of the eye, goes straight up into the scalp line, and then runs about an inch, inch and a half, like on either side alongside the spine. And so it's kind of like, here's the middle of the spine. And then like on both sides of the spine, we've got like the bladder meridian. It goes down into the buttocks, into the legs, so
Okay.
much stuff that we can say about those particular body parts. But the urinary bladder channel is associated with the water element in Chinese medicine, which is all about fear. It's associated with having a nervous system that is reactive. Oftentimes when it comes to the bladder meridian, it's about protection from external forces. And so like, if you think about how you protect yourself, it's like you curl up and you allow for your back to take, the beating so that your internal organs don't have to. And then if you think about like, even the spaces that it traverses on your body, it's like it starts from the inner eye, like the inside of your eye. And it's like your eyes are it's taking in that external information. It's then interpreting it as like, do I need to protect myself, or do I need to, is this a safe situation? And then it runs down the back of your legs because it's like, this might be a situation where you literally have to fight or flight, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so sort of hearing that as context, I'm curious how that lands for you and if that has any sort of application in your life and how your spine has literally morphed to like accommodate, something.
100%, 100%. Because of the way it like curves, I have multiple curves in my neck and then both in my spine, like the S curve. And
Mm.
then as well as the like torsion of each vertebrae, they like kind of twist around. So there's this, for me, just overall contraction of like exactly what you're saying, like contraction to protect myself.
Mm-hmm.
So even within that pain flare, there was something about like, it's almost like the muscles didn't want to let go, which
Mm-hmm.
to me is right. It's so interesting because it's like, what is triggering you to hold on so tightly and not just like, relax, even with a TENS unit or massage or whatever. They were just holding on for dear life. And I've definitely felt that I've run anxious, if you will, like as far back as I can remember. I've always been very eager to please, perform well, not disappoint. I also trained in ballet for 17 years. So that was a very
Mm.
high intensity environment to be in, with a lot of criticism about need to be a certain way and all these things. So there's just a lot of dynamics where I sense I came in that way, and a lot of external factors kind of supported it more, that I just, in order to be protected. And then what's interesting is it almost became, I mean, there was some benefit to it because then I was well liked,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, well, sure, I'll do whatever you want. Like, I was just so easygoing and I support you, whatever you say. You know what I mean? Not to be not the annoying piece, but like just enough that was very sensitive to the energy, always very sensitive.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, oh, well, I'm likable and people like me and it's cool. It's like I made it like this positive thing. So it's kind of like not until like you're saying, the body speaking in sensations, pain, illness. It's funny you're talking about eyes, because I've definitely had ocular migraine stuff before, where I have like the vision
Mm-hmm.
disturbance.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a brain tumor when I was 12, actually on my occipital lobe. So I'm just wondering how that's all connected.
Mm.
But my body has definitely expressed itself in these kind of major ways, so to speak.
Yeah.
Luckily, not in chronic illness. I mean, I'll take the chronic pain over illness, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
if I had to
Mm-hmm.
pick. But it's just so interesting. I use, wondering if you're familiar, Louise Hay's Heal Your Body from A to Z, her book that has like
I've
all these
heard of it.
physical
I haven't read
symptoms
it.
and then
Yeah.
corresponding emotional root cause to kind of connect maybe what is energetically holding certain things in
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to circle back to something that you just said, which I think is a really important piece to like highlight, underline, neon sign, which is, that we can label it as like your people pleasing pattern. Um, but like that had a service for you,
Mm-hmm.
it brought in validation, it brought in love, it brought in belonging, it brought in attention. It might have also shielded you from negative attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we're sort of talking about any of these more shadowy aspects of ourselves, or the aspects that culture deems as being negative or shadowy, like I want to dive into anger so
Mm.
badly with you.
Yes.
um, but like, we also need to recognize that that shadow has kept you safe. And so there's a level of like gratitude and compassion that we must have for those older parts of ourselves, like the kid. I also grew up in a house where like anger was not allowed,
Mm-hmm.
both familially and also culturally. And so like I can understand like where that suppression of my anger comes from. And there's aspects of my like sort of like day-to-day adult life where I'm like, why am I not over this yet?
Yeah.
And I also have to like have a lot of gratitude and respect and compassion for the 10-year-old version, the 5-year-old version, the 3-year-old version of me who recognized that anger was not a safe emotion to express,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. And feels really familiar, because it's almost as if family didn't have the tools, in how to express it
Hmm.
appropriately, if you will. I mean, not do harm. So it was just suppression or be passive aggressive, or the kind of the
Hmm.
options, because then it looks like I always have it all together. It's like this idea that anger is you losing control.
Yeah.
And I think people just have in their head that it jumps to, then it's abusive in some regard.
Hmm.
And so it's almost done us a disservice, because then we are very uncomfortable with it. I mean, I am still learning to kind of navigate that level of energy circulating in my body.
Yeah.
And so I get that for me, when anyone has some sort of potency or intensity, it doesn't even necessarily need to be really assertive or getting to the point of aggressive. I'm already kind of shutting down, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
protection mode. And so I
Hmm.
just noticed that with myself around other people who are potent, that I go into shut down, rather than,
Hmm.
I don't want to say matching it, but kind of just coming up with that level of frequency, not in a fight mode, but just in I'm honoring my energy to be here.
Yeah.
That's quite different, I get,
Yeah.
because then you give your physical body space, which is what it's desiring all the time, rather than the contraction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I can see, similar patterns in perhaps our upbringing. Um, my parents immigrated from Korea, and there's an actual term in Korean called hwabyong,
Okay.
which means anger disease. And
Oh,
so, like I think about the context of my culture, and it's like, oh man, Korea is this tiny little peninsula that has been colonized by the Japanese and the Chinese
mm,
for a long, long time. And like really controlled to some like pretty extreme levels. Like we talk about colonization in a lot of different aspects, but like I'm starting to dive into my own cultural history and being like, oh man, like this existed in Korea for a really long time as well. And so I think about my ancestors who had to grow up and, exist as well as they could in that kind of environment. And it's like, yeah, of course anger would have been a life or death sort of
yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And so then culturally, Koreans have created this term called hwabyong, which is anger disease, which you aren't allowed to be anger. Like if you are angry, there's something wrong with you, or there's something diseased about you.
Wow.
And so, that passive aggression piece is such an interesting dynamic because it's not like the anger just goes away,
No,
you know,
no, no.
of any of the emotions, like,
Yeah.
all the emotions can mutate. But I find that like with anger in particular, like because it has such like an outward expression,
Mm-hmm.
it wants to be dynamic and take up space and like be energetically big. Like when you suppress anger, it like turns and mutates into this like funny passive aggressive thing that I like, that was just the soup that I grew up in, not really realizing that was the case. So like it's like I know that I've had clients who have had really traumatic relationships in their families around anger being perhaps mutated in the opposite direction, where it's turned into like this toxic explosive thing and now there's
Yeah.
violence,
Yeah.
right? But in my family, I couldn't really pinpoint that thing as anger because it was never expressed. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How is it
Yeah.
like in your family?
Um, yeah, it was not expressed, or it was more just passive aggressive, like there was the silent treatment. So
Hmm.
there just wasn't a lot of talk about it, or there'd be like kind of the random, family fight, like explosion, so to speak.
Hmm.
Nothing physically abusive, but just like yelling. So it's like it had the pendulum. Oh, I didn't see experiences where it was like appropriately asserted, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting kind of what you're sharing, because it sounds like there's certainly this, generational trauma that's like passed down the lineage that's just in our DNA. So it's like coming out of the womb already having this kind of imprint on,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then being in a family and it's like continued on over and over again. And I just kind of what you're saying, how anger just desires to be outwardly expressed. This is where I'm getting that for me, it's almost like we can't bypass it. Like, I
Yes.
don't know if bypassing really exists, because your body will let you know if
Yeah.
you're bypassing. Your body will let you know.
Yeah.
And so I get that it's like, I for so long have attempted to do so. And at some point, it's just I'm being invited to choose something else. And so it is a little weird right now because I'm navigating, well, what do I tolerate or what do I stand for? Again, kind of always been that person that could see all the different points of view, like, well, I get why you see it, I get why you see it this way, I get why, you know what I mean? And so it's really in service of wanting to be liked, kind of being able to chameleon oneself, right? And
Yeah.
so what I'm working on right now in service of getting more sensitive, I would say, to what I stand for, is swinging the pendulum a bit the other way, of coming to a place of being just a lot less tolerant, like maybe more intolerant than I think I should be, or whatever, in service of allowing myself to feel around what feels
Mm.
good. I
Yeah.
liken it to, I struggled with disordered eating back in my early 20s and early teens, late teens, with ballet and all that. And what helped me heal after a lot of periods of restriction and binging was just saying, F it. I can have whatever I want. Nothing's good, bad. I can eat whatever I want, have whatever I want. Like, and just being like, it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
service of then coming back to neutral and finding this place of, okay, yeah, I can listen to my body now. Now this feels good. This doesn't feel good. And follow that. So I'm kind of playing around with something similar, not
Yeah.
obviously an explosive or an abusive way, just, playing around with, no, I don't tolerate that. Okay. How could I speak up about that? Could I go growl in my room right now? Like, how can I just allow this to circulate more so that my physical body can match it? Because I think before, my physical body was like, yeah, I can't handle this. Because part
Yeah.
of during that pain flare, I actually even had some vertigo one day when I was starting to circulate more anger. Like, I literally became so insanely dizzy, not just lightheaded, like legit vertigo, and
Mm.
threw up. And I was like, oh, okay, like my body is starting to wake up to something
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about that is there's this permission slip to be clumsy about it, like to be messy, to
Yeah.
not have it look perfect. And, your like sense of center and like your new sense of neutrality is likely going to be like, I'm thinking of, a dear friend of mine, Nadine Zumat, who, also has been on the podcast a bunch. Like, when I watched her kind of move through anger, I was like, oh, she got the spicy,
Jalapeno spicy. Yeah.
and I loved watching that in her. And I don't know that like my neutral would be, or like my alchemization of anger is ever going to look that way,
Yeah.
And so being able to give yourself the permission slip to kind of just like pendulum swing in a different way instead of being stuck at this like set point.
Yeah.
It feels like just a really beautiful practice that you've embarked on.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I wonder how willing I'll be to expose it, like let's say online, so to speak. I'm not sure yet because there's definitely a lot of conditioning around don't show up bitter or angry or, kind of even initially from being, just the psychologist of the blank slate. I mean, that was my original training was clinical psychology. Certainly I've moved away from that, but there's still that I have to look like I have it all together all the time. And
Mm,
it's like that doesn't even exist. Where
mm,
did we decide that even is real? And so this idea of even training psychologists to be blank slate is again doing us a disservice because it's like, here, reach for something that doesn't exist and then contort yourself to be a certain way.
yeah,
And how healing could it be? And this is why I loved Lindsay's work and seeing her so willing to expose it online and expose the mess truly because it's inspiring than to be
yeah,
able to choose it for myself.
yeah, yeah.
So that's certainly where I'm playing with it right now.
Yeah, I love it. My personal sort of boundary that I hold for myself, and I'd be curious to see what Lindsay would say about this. I almost feel like she should just be sitting here with us, but
I know, right? We have to do one, the three of us next time.
because some of the things that you're referencing is like she takes videos of herself while she's like in the process of you know like moving through perhaps pushing away a bully. And she's like really imagining in her mind, like, I'm pushing you away and you are not allowed in my space. And she's like such a raw feeler in that.
Yeah.
And I have to admit that it brings something up in me because I also do that kind of process work, but I like similar to you, I'm kind of like, what's that line of showing that to the public? Would it be in service? There's a part of me that feels like I still am learning and moving through some of those emotions myself. And so if it doesn't feel integrated in me, then I have a hesitation to share that publicly, not because I want to hide any part of it or like I'm very transparent online, but there's a level of like, the boundary that I have for myself in the social media space is like, I don't want people coming to the space and feeling like they need to take care of me,
Yeah.
if that makes sense,
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm really familiar with that because it's like I function from the belief of, kind of exposing, but not bleeding, so to speak. And so it's kind of that same
Hmm.
idea, not bleeding on people. So they feel like they have to scoop you up. And
Yeah.
so I get that I'm kind of in a similar place where this is all very new for me and I like wouldn't feel comfortable showing it as I'm working through it.
Yeah.
I'm willing to like speak about it pretty shortly after once I have some kind of grounded awareness about it so I can
Yeah.
share about it. But I get that there's something about, I mean, feeling safe to expose that, right? Because
Yeah.
again, we're just exploring. It's not right or wrong to show it. It's interesting. I think it is, really helpful because it does show what is truly going on for
Yeah.
folks,
Yeah.
right? At the same time, not everyone has to show it. I get that that's like, we're kind of all called to different things. So, but I guess it's like the level of safety just at this really primal level
Hmm.
of what
Hmm.
we're willing to expose.
Yeah. And I think that, like, to Lindsay's credit, she is really good at recognizing what feels integrated and what doesn't feel integrated,
Yeah.
and like she's not putting stuff out there being like, hey, people, please take care of me. Like, I think that it is really helpful in her aspect. It's just something that I'm kind of exploring in my own aspects because it feels awkward to me to like be like, I'm in the middle of my process work and then I've got to throw my camera on,
Yeah.
you know? And and to me, it's also, there's a level of like, I ask my inner circle to support me in those feelings. Um, and, and yeah, it's just an interesting thing because something that I say a lot is that business is a spiritual practice. And here we go. Like we're
Mm,
talking about these people pleasing tendencies that you and I both have.
yeah.
And it's coming up. Like I've worked on that my entire life. I have really good boundaries with my family members now. There's nobody in my life now where I'm like, ooh, I feel like I need to fawn to that person to like get
Mm,
them to like me. Like I've done a lot
mm,
of like discernment and releasing and
yeah.
and
Love it.
calling in the right people. And it's so interesting that like, oh, hey universe, like here's another layer of the people pleasing thing that you hadn't quite explored in the shape of social media. like like how yeah, these patterns continue to show themselves as teachers.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, I got on TikTok in like 2020. So, it was kind of before it got really popular and, like I'd say January 2020. And so I grew pretty fast on there. And what came with that was a lot of viral videos and a lot of intense comments, that at times had me just ball up on the couch for the weekend because I
Mm.
just was like, my body could not process that level of intensity, especially being the people pleaser and not familiar with circulating that potency, anger frequency in my body as much. I didn't go into like, well, F you, like, and come back. I just was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? I'm so bad. Oh my God, And so a lot of that has had me certainly shut down at times,
Hmm.
on social. And it's definitely taken some time to, build up the strength to be willing to no block you by like, no, I don't need to tolerate you so you can slide into my DMs and abuse me. Because before I was just trying to, it was almost like good customer service. The customer's always right. Kind of a similar idea. Like, okay, you can come to my DM. What? And now, I'm definitely, not functioning from that place, but that took some time. And I get that it's kind of like we receive online perhaps what we are willing to tolerate, navigate, like the level we're kind of like we're matched with what we can manage
Mm.
at this point is what I
Hmm.
get. And then as we kind of continue to build our capacity, then more can come in, we can continue to expand. And like that is this ongoing process is kind of
Mm.
where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah. I'm curious if you'd be willing to like speak a little bit more about that because that's like one of the fears that many of my clients have is like if I show who I really am, if I really share what my thoughts are, they're kind of controversial. And what if I get, you know, called out, canceled, you know, get all this. I mean, the internet can be like just a straight up hateful place,
Yes.
you know? And
Yeah.
so how has that been for you navigating those pieces, and what do you tell yourself when somebody comes in to your DMs and decides to push on some of your thoughts and opinions?
Yeah, well, I during COVID, I started to test the waters and speak out on some things, and not even as not even exactly what I was even thinking. Like I was still like kind of far away from the real energy I was feeling, like just kind
Hmm.
of planting some seeds, and that still kind of blew up at that time. So now in because I was going from a place of like I should share this is the right thing to share or I need to, but like you're saying, it is a scary hateful place, and also can be legitimately scary if some people's, if you're very controversial and you start receiving death threats or like things like that, like it can
Hmm.
swing to actually being legitimate safety. So I appreciate that as well. But now where I function from is asking myself a question. So if someone comes in my DMs and it seems like it's this just a curiosity question, like it's phrased like it's like I'm just curious, but you can feel the energy is veiled with judgment and I'm about ready to stab you, then
Mm.
I am saying delete, goodbye. Like I'm not even engaging. But in order to get that awareness, I will ask a question of myself. Will it create greater to answer this person? What am I aware of here? What energy is present, right? I'm
Hmm.
just trying to get my awareness tapped into the energy I'm perceiving and then choose from there
Yeah.
because it's just your energy is precious.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I'm hearing in that is that there's a sacred form of anger where you get to choose whether this person mm, gets to take up space in your life, for lack of a
Mm-hmm.
better way of looking at it. Because I think that oftentimes we think about anger as being this like, no, you don't have, you know, like you have to like voice it, like you have to like
Yeah.
say the thing and push back against that person. And and sometimes it can just be as simple as block and delete, and that could be a sacred expression of anger as well,
Yeah.
because not anyone, like no one is entitled to taking up time and space in your life.
Mm-mm.
And so, like, if you were to try to engage with somebody in like who's bringing in that kind of energy, it would then ironically be another form of people pleasing,
Yeah.
just mutated in a different way, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of get what you're saying because it's like there's some people where you can just feel it, like you feel their boundary. They don't even have to say it. They are just maybe a little more intense, more potent, more fiery energy. And so you just know to not even maybe just the way they express themselves in general is just much more assertive. And so I get I'm seeking to play around with that more, to embody that a bit more. And with something like a DM, it's kind of like I got to be mindful of what my body is circulating right now, especially like if you're dealing with pain. Okay, no, I'm not going to try to circulate this right now. It's like I'm always just seeking what is going to create greater, not what is the right thing to do. Because it's
Mm,
like judgment will stick us every time because it's a conclusion. It's like I'm always looking for, well, what's the right thing to do based on who, based on who says what. Like no,
yeah,
so it's right. They could say it's right to answer, I could say it's right to not answer. Who wins? And so
yeah,
to me that's irrelevant. I try as much as possible to not function from the right wrong universe and function more from yes no energetically, what is creating greater, right? So it's like for everyone. And for me, not responding, not siphoning my energy that way, let's say in that particular example,
hmm,
great for my body and sets a boundary for that person for them to get feedback that, hey, maybe you don't get to come in this way, people don't engage with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. Love it. We've been talking about anger for a little bit now, and I want to shift it a little bit into one of the, I would say that I'm going to stop myself there because I want to say that like anger and fear are the two emotions that I see the most unintegrated in my practice, but that's not necessarily true for everyone else, but it just seems to be like what shows up in my practice. Because my experience of it is oftentimes when there is unintegrated anger, there's almost always a layer of unintegrated fear that's like below the surface and like needing to be like honored and really acknowledged. I'm curious if that's also the case for you, either in your experience or in your clients.
I'm wondering, my current perception of it is, and perhaps this is because kind of what I'm experiencing, because I definitely, my clients, I see very similar things. For me, it's like the defeat, there's some sort of grief there. So it's almost like below the fear, it's a little bit lower energy. And so I'm just curious, looking at, okay, well, what is this grief? What is the kind of sad girl vibes that show up when it's like, I want to, be angry about this something. This is not right. I don't stand for this. But then it's almost like my body can't sustain it and it goes down into sadness. So that's where mine drops. Because I live a little bit more in I want to say the fear range, or the like eager to please. Okay. Like I'm ready to go, like that kind of energy. Cause I feel like that one's a familiar radio station. So when I dial up to anger, then it like drops down a little bit below, has been my experience. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm feeling called to share a personal experience that I'm having. It feels more integrated now, but it still feels like it's a little bit in progress. But I got really sick in January of this year. I never get colds, and I got hit with like the deepest, like maybe it was COVID. I was testing, but it wasn't coming back as being conclusive at all. But essentially I was just like down and out for 2 weeks. And then I had a cough that like just would not go away for about 2 to 3 months after that. And energetically in Chinese medicine, we say that the lungs are associated with grief. And I was like, I'm not grieving anything. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is just stupid. And it took my best friend, who pointed out that like right around when I got sick, I found out that my grandma, like she's been struggling with like memory and dementia and a lot of things, but she's getting worse. And my grandfather is not taking the best, in my opinion, the best care that he could of her. Meaning her needs are being met, but I would do them differently. Which is not to say that it's the right way to do it, but yeah, I'll leave it at that. And I have a complicated relationship with my grandmother. If we talk about repressed anger, there's like so much repressed anger in that relationship. Like she is the expression of repressed anger and martyrdom, and a lot of the I would say the bigger T traumas that I've had in my life have revolved around my relationship with my grandmother. And I still love her. It's like, it's this nuanced relationship, right? And I planned a trip out to my friend's horse ranch in Nevada. And it was interesting because I invited a bunch of people to come. No, like it was like this weird universal thing where like most of my friends are usually like, yeah, I'll meet you there. And just like nobody could come.
Mm.
And so I had this like solo trip all by myself in the desert visiting a friend. Um, and there was one night, and like the desert is like in the middle of nowhere. There's literally no cars out there. And so I took a drive out into the middle of the desert and just like intuitively, like my body felt like it needed to scream,
Mm-hmm.
and moved through like so much anger, and moved through like I feel like years and years and years of just like feeling mad at my grandmother, feeling mad at my grandfather,
Wow.
like didn't really realize that that was like locked up in my body in that way. Got out of the car and like just like pounded on the sand and like let myself kind of have like a temper tantrum, which I was never allowed to have when I was a kid, you know? And it wasn't until after I had like fully like sort of like gotten that out of my system was I able to like acknowledge that like actually this is probably going to be my grandmother's last few years of her life, you know, and like really was able to like acknowledge the grief of that.
Mm.
And amazingly, that's when my lungs started feeling better too. Like
Wow.
it's just so interesting. Like the body is like this expressive like communicator, and was
Mm-hmm.
trying to tell me like, hey, you got to move through some stuff to like get to the grief. And I could not see the grief because I was so blinded by the anger, you
Yeah.
know?
Your body responds at a cellular level when you're going through like the actual grief. And then it's kind of like when you finally let go, that's the healing period or the symptom period. So that's when
Mm,
the symptoms kind of proliferate, come up. And so I
mm,
was like, I really have always resonated with that because anytime that I've gone through like just intense stress in my life, then I'm sick right after. And kind of what you're saying, like with your grandmother, like almost like you had some maybe unconscious awareness of it, and then with that it popped into consciousness, and it was like just so
yeah,
much energy for the body to circulate, and that it
yeah,
literally does change. Cells are proliferating and just things are changing internally.
yeah, yeah.
um and then kind of when there's this initial, like, I want to say surrender or let go, then kind of symptoms arise. I'm wondering how that resonates with your timeline and TCM.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about TCM necessarily, but definitely when it comes to like our understanding of the nervous system, you know, when we're in a stress response, like it it would be counter to our survival to like actually experience all the things that are happening in our body in
Mm.
that moment of the stress response, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
again, similar like what we were talking about with anger earlier, it's like it doesn't just go away. Like your body still needs to be able to process and digest that stress response in a way. I've had similar experiences too, where it's like I can get myself through any midterm or final, but then afterwards, that's when I get sick or get a
Yeah.
migraine, you know?
Right.
And I'm curious if any of the listeners resonate with that, because yeah, I'm it's interesting that it's being documented per se in some sort of system, because it's
Mhm.
definitely a pattern that I've seen both in my own life and in my clients' lives.
Yeah, yeah. So I believe Louise Hay also studied it, and that was like kind of part of what informed some of
Mm,
her books. But yeah, German New Medicine or German Healing Knowledge, I believe, has it's been changed the name, but they've come up with multiple biological laws that basically, when you experience, kind of this emotional response, then you can expect to see it in this place in the body.
yeah,
So that again, like what you're saying, like the body is giving us the information based on symptoms, pain, sensations,
yeah,
and if only we could transcribe it
yeah.
more
And
efficiently.
and also like the body is so wise in choosing
Mm-hmm.
that timing too, because imagine if it gave you all that information in the midst of like you
Oh
going
yeah,
through the thing, like you wouldn't be able to digest it,
yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so it's actually waiting until the dust has settled a little bit and being like, okay, now that we have a chance to breathe, like I've got some things to say.
Yeah, 100%. Because this pain flare for me came after like I had like boom, 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 just like a couple things where I really need to keep it together and perform, and so to speak. And then all of a
Mm,
sudden, when I didn't have anything imminent, it was like, okay, here we go. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I didn't plan more things for this month, because it really slowed me down
yeah.
and got my attention. Because
Yeah.
if that hadn't happened, I definitely would not have had this awareness around anger.
Yeah.
I would just be continuing to function the way I
Yeah.
function.
Yeah. And also, like, even just in you saying that, like, it made me slow down,
Mm,
you know?
hmm.
Like, the body was like, hey, girl, maybe take a break.
Yeah.
Maybe stop trying to keep shit together,
Hmm.
you know? And if you aren't going to listen in the, small symptom ways, like, here we go. Here's a pain flare. Like, now
Yeah.
you have to, you know?
Yeah. And that's why I literally pinged Lindsay, because she had just put out her offer. I believe it was Feel Without Fear. She had just
Hmm.
put it out. And I was like, yes, that is exactly it. Like that, I had the same kind of awareness from my physical experience. And I was like, boom, you're just so intuitively on it right now. So
Hmm.
that was so cool to see that, also that kind of confirmation in my own world. I'm like, okay, like it is like it's a thing
Yeah.
that people are really needing support with,
Yeah.
and even me, the person that's like trained in psychology, neurolinguistic programming. I mean, I have a laundry list of trainings and certifications, and it's like all the training in the world, all the book knowledge will not replace the embodied knowledge. It's
Yes.
not the same.
Yeah. Yeah. There's it's been interesting because Lindsay and I were talking about this of like when she puts out videos about anger, like she gets so much more attention for those videos than when she puts out videos about like fear.
Mm-hmm.
And um I sort of posited this question to her as like is there a level of like the consciousness level, particularly with her audience, where they are more resonant with the anger piece because that's like the aspect that they can really access at the surface level. Like I don't know that everyone is able to identify like, oh, this anger or whatever other sort of expression is happening, like at the core of it it's actually about fear. I don't know that
Mm-hmm.
everyone can like sort of connect those dots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I get it depends on what folks grew up with what was safe. Um,
Mm,
and so it's like if anger was familiar, maybe not even safe, but if it was familiar, the kind of overt reaction, then that just might be a reflex for folks.
mm,
Versus the suppression, then to me, it's like anger is not familiar and not something I feel comfortable with. My reflex is shut down
mm.
instead. So for me, I sense it's more just because I feel like what is it about fear that people are afraid to feel, would be my question to you.
Mm.
Like, or is it like the weakness, or what is it about that?
Well, there's this exercise that I do with some of my clients when I'm like sensing that fear. And I recognize that this is not always safe for them to do on their own. And so this is why I think it's so important to work with somebody when
Yeah.
you're in process. Um, but I feel like a lot of people get a flavor, get a sense of the fear, and then take themselves down this deep, dark pit, but don't continue to walk until they get out of it.
Okay.
Like, does that make sense? Like, the question that
Yes.
I'm always asking them is like, and then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And there's always a point when I'm doing that practice with folks where they like hit a wall and they're like, I hadn't thought about what happens after worst case scenario of, all of my family members are dead. I'm now living on the street trying to feed all the cats and, like,
Yeah.
and, and they never ask themselves to get themselves out of that hole. And so I think that's the gravity of fear
Yeah.
is in Taoist medicine, it is the most yin of all of the elements or all of the
Mm.
emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't have this like natural inclination to move upwards,
Yeah.
you know? Like
Yeah.
the element of fear is water. And
Okay.
so like water trickles downward. It doesn't really go up unless you have some other element like wood to draw it up or fire to,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
steam it up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost feel like fear needs co-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
So like I need to come in as a practitioner with my own sort of like woody energy to draw that water up, or with my earth energy to then have that water percolate up, or that fire energy to
Yeah.
like steam that water up, if that makes sense.
Oh my gosh, 100%. I love that. Something really similar I do is called play out the tape. So it's the same
Mm,
idea as like, and then what happened? And then what happened? And then what happened? Because people get paralyzed in this middle of the movie. Like it's the
yeah.
height of the movie,
Yeah.
it's the height of the trauma, and then pause, and then they just keep looking at that screen over and over again, and they
Yeah.
don't move past that, right? And so it's kind of exactly what you're doing is workshopping them all the way to the end of where no, you can handle it. You do eventually recover. Yes, would it be a lot to
Yeah.
navigate? Of course, acknowledging all that. And then you see yourself kind of moving on with your life, and maybe your life looks different, and et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
Just to get out of that paralyzation mode. Because what you're saying
Hmm.
with water just being like it needs something to get it either to go up, or it's like it'll naturally just move into shutdown, like
Yeah.
paralyzation into shutdown.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, I love that. Um, and I don't know. I think that like what we're kind of circling around is this concept of alchemizing emotions.
Yeah.
Like neither of us are saying that like emotions are bad, that fear or anger or any of the other emotions are bad. It's just what can you do to support yourself in the midst of that raw emotion so that it can be digested and alchemized rather than mutated.
Yeah, 100%. So the way I describe it to folks is to look at it like weather, because you have a lot. I mean, you might have some judgments about weather, but you have a lot less judgments and projections about weather. Like right now, it's starting to get stormy, it's thundering, it's likely going to rain. And it's just like, oh, that's just interesting. And so, what if you could see your emotions similarly with that spaciousness of not being in judgment? Because
Mm,
exactly what you're saying, if we go into judgment of the emotion being bad, we're going to lock it into place and really stick our bodies with it rather than allowing it to flow. Because if I just see it as weather, it's like, okay, that's interesting. I can allow myself to thunderstorm
mm,
and then move through it, right? So I'm not
mhm.
trying to bypass it.
Yeah.
And you know what's so interesting is so one of my clients recently was sharing that he had to go into the principal's office, so to speak, for his daughter because she was growling at school, so acting inappropriately. And
Mm,
we discussed that because it, to me, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Here she is intuitively experiencing
yeah.
anger, wanting to express it in, to me, a really helpful way. But
Yeah.
school, the system was saying, no, no, sit in your chair, be the good little girl, and right, and do all of that. And I was like, oh my gosh, where's the system continuing to perpetuate when
Yeah.
kids are already so intuitive, knowing a helpful way to express it?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I want to like growl with that little
I
girl.
know. That's how it's like. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that
Yeah.
was, and I just saw his energy as a father shift so quickly because all of a sudden he was like, yeah, wow, she know he was proud of her versus feeling
Mm,
defeated, like he had not taught her right or what not. And so then his backbone started to strengthen and was looking
yeah.
at, okay, well, what could I assert myself with them? How
Yeah.
could they support her in
Yeah.
expressing emotions appropriately? How are
Yeah.
they helping the kids express emotions
Yeah.
appropriately? That's where it starts.
Yeah. And like again to like bring it back to like this health the concept of healthy anger, you were able to sort of help him alchemize what would be an appropriate emotion of his own anger.
Yeah.
Like Like for me, if that was my kid, I'd be like, how dare you tell my kid not to feel her feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and I would assert myself in that way. But in this situation, you were able to sort of like brew up that necessary anger so that he could hold a boundary. And, I'm sure that you're not telling him to go in there and like slam open the door
Right.
and like start yelling at the principal, but like, assertive boundary holding
Mm-hmm.
so that the kid can then have a safe container to
Yeah.
like have her emotions flow. Like that's so beautiful.
Yeah. And I get there's just this small distinction between anger and potency is kind of how I like to see it.
Mm,
Potency being the assertion, this doesn't work for me. This is not
mm,
okay. And this is what I'd like to see, right? The just assertion. The anger I get can be a little more than on the aggressive side, or we're starting to tell ourselves stories about why we're angry and we should be angry. And we start to kind of get in this loop, so to speak. And that's
mhm.
where it can look more messy, I get.
Yeah.
And so, of course, as we're navigating this, it is going to be messy, right? And so we might fumble around and not express it appropriately all the time.
Yeah.
And that's where we're seeking to be. Can we allow ourselves to be messy and ideally not harm anyone, right? And
Yeah.
like resurrect more potency? Because I get if we allowed ourselves to be potent more often, like in the moment, then we probably wouldn't find ourselves in the mess of anger, so to speak.
Mm,
Because it's like I'm already allowing the energy through rather than suppressing it. And then it's like, well, now it blows and it's all fumbly all over the place.
mhm. Mhm.
I mean, I tell my clients a lot to think about like dogs or wolves, packs. What does the leader of the pack do? He snaps.
Mhm.
He snaps to keep them in place, right?
Mhm.
But then
Mhm.
they are right back to hunting together
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
just potency. And then
Yeah.
the energy shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, I think of like I think my sympathetic heart goes out to folks who are afraid to tap into their potency because their lives are set up in such a way that if they were to tap into their potency because they've not accessed that for such a long time, they have a lot to lose.
Yes.
The structure of their life is set up in such a way that their relationships expect them to suppress their anger. The system, like you were talking about with the school, the system expects this child to not growl in the classroom,
Yeah.
and it's I can just say this as being on the other side of having like had a really um a continuing to evolve, I guess, relationship with the potency of anger, because now I see like all the people in my life are, like I said earlier, like, oh my God, I love every single one of them. And I've probably been pissed off like in a really deep way with all of them at some point or another.
Yeah.
We've come up against these like challenges and like had to butt heads and had to like really decide like does this work for us?
Mhm.
Um, and that's not to say that I like, you need to go out there and like stir up drama and like trouble where there isn't any to like challenge and see if those people are meant to be there or not. But like, when I was married to my first husband and I started to like really assert myself, like you were saying, like starting to assert that potency of anger, there were a lot of people in that part of my life, not just my husband, who were like not okay with that.
Yeah.
And so I see where the fear can percolate in
Mm.
for folks where it's like, yeah, the reality is that the price of accessing the potency of your anger might be the loss of some really, really important relationships in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, which I get, because that's something I'll talk about is the willingness to lose, right? It's like if we're
Mm,
unwilling to lose, then that can keep us stuck a bit.
mhm, mhm.
And I get where it can go all the way down to this almost like primal level of if you lost the whole tribe, then that could be dangerous for your safety and well-being, right? If
Yeah,
like you're not provided for or something, right? Everyone needs to work together in some capacity.
yeah,
So I get where that can like kind of really resurrect a deep wound.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so it's tough to navigate for
Yeah.
sure. And I appreciate folks that are so direct. I'm like, I know where I am with you all the
Yeah.
time because it's clear cut. And
Yeah.
I appreciate that so much. That I get if we, I won't say normalize that, but just had more allowance for that, like, the girl growling in school, like just expressing ourselves
Hmm.
more, that we would actually probably feel safer with each other.
Yeah.
Because right now, right, we're suppressing it all and like trying to mask and, just tiptoe and contort ourselves.
Yeah.
But if we really allowed ourselves to, like you're saying, with your good friends where you did butt heads, like get to that place of, I would say conflict and resolution, but like, where the energy builds and then releases. If we got to
Hmm.
that place more readily with our circles, we would feel safer at a deeper level of not
Yeah.
being abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that applies to the spiritual entrepreneurial journey as well,
Mm,
because it's like so many people are afraid to rock the boat or say things that are off the cuff or say things that are maybe, a little bit more nuanced than our current system allows,
yeah.
because they're like, ooh, what if I lose followers? What if people unsubscribe from my newsletter list? And then it's like, to me, it's like, that's a clean break. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like they have the sovereignty to choose whether they want to be in your sphere or not.
Yeah.
And by you withholding information, that might, yeah, they might choose no. By you withholding information, that just makes you feel insecure about your community.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea of being more transparent and also exposing our shadows, because especially as coaches, when you're the one facilitating others, there is that kind of pressure. Like you're also in a role, so to speak, in
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
moment. Yet at the same time, you are human and having all these messy, shadowy experiences. And so I get when we can share some of that vulnerability online, then it's like informed consent. Then people
Hmm.
already know, okay, this is the
Hmm.
area she struggles with. This is the area that she's like, I don't want to say winning at, but like really rocking it at. And so just kind of, it gives people, an understanding of the territory so that it's not this, I have it all together. Look at my 100K months. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Where then people are pedestaling you and then
Yeah.
ultimately coming into your space. And the first moment that you show any sort of humanness, it's like, wait a second, you're supposed
Hmm.
to be this perfect, you have it all together. It's like we kind of start to create these, gosh, I'm forgetting the word, but it's just really this like split, vision of who we are versus showing more of ourselves. And again, not the whole kitchen sink, because I get, it's like, what do you feel safe exposing and what do you feel comfortable sharing online? And when people have a better idea of who you are, then boom, it's easy for them to come in your world. Again, that informed consent, they kind of know what to expect, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. I love that reframe of like you actually being clear about who you are is giving your community informed consent. That feels really important to name, and I'm going to continue to feel into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely still navigating it, but I'll let you know how it
Hmm.
goes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think and like you were saying earlier, like the way that I think of it is like show the scar, not the wound.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to, I started posting online around 2019, 2018 or so. And like it took me a lot longer between the wounding and the scar for me
Mm-hmm.
to feel safe enough to like share it with anybody outside of my like intimate circles.
Yeah.
Um, I think that part of why, Lindsay is so compelling, I would also put you in that category, is that like it seems like as somebody in both of your communities, like that movement between the wounding and the scar is like a much quicker process. And so we get to sort of like see that process while it's still fresh for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I find that like I first share it probably in my mastermind folks because it's like a small intimate container. They are more familiar with me. A lot of them have been in my world for a while now, not just that container. And so once I've, kind of what you're saying, like you have this, it's like partial integration, but also processing. I like to share it with them so that they have a sense of how I'm workshopping it. And so like I've shared throughout my pain flare experience and when I'm workshopping and navigating anger, and it brought clarity for others, which I love. So it's such great teaching moments. And then I get, when it's a little more integrated, then I share it with social, or, you know what I mean? I continue to kind of work my way out. Like maybe it's my then individual calls or group calls. And then maybe it's social. Social tends to be like a little later in the journey. But certainly, because at first I judged myself for that. I was like, no, I need to have more embodied awareness about this. This needs to be a teaching moment, and kind of, and I've let that go because that just became exhausting to create that way. And I'm like, I don't care. Now it's really like, I have something to say for my robe. I'm going to film right now. You know what I mean? And just, even if it's not fully integrated, I want to just put the energy out there to keep it moving. And somehow that is still of interest, even if people aren't commenting or whatever. I want people to get that what they have to say as they say it will shift the energy for others. And so if we can come from a place of creating unconditionally, that's the hard part, right? We want to create, I want to create because I want the likes, I want the follows, I want the buyers. That will burn you out. You have to create unconditionally, that it's like fulfilling for you, and know that it truly is changing the world, truly.
And, I think that it's so easy to get caught up in the social media game of like, oh, I didn't get as many likes or as many follows this time or however many comments. But like, I've had folks who have come to me years later and like signed up to do some one-on-one work or signed up for a group coaching thing. And they like reference a thing that I put out years ago. And so it's like that stuck with them enough that like, even if they didn't comment, even if they didn't put a like on, like it still reverberated in their system in such a way that it was like, it was memorable for them. Like the fact that anybody remembers a single social media post years later, like I think is pretty miraculous, because it's, that system is designed to have like low memory function. But I think that a lot of times people, especially as they're starting out their businesses, have this idea of like, oh, if it didn't pay off within this 24-hour cycle, like then that was just like not worth me putting together. And it's like, no, you don't know what seeds are being planted today that, for whatever reason, whatever's happening in that person's life, they're just not quite ready to step into a container or step into that deeper work. And even if they never end up signing up for something, you can still rest assured that like the thing that you put out there was worth putting out there.
Yeah, 100%. And to me, it's like social media is a lifestyle choice. Like all of it is a lifestyle choice, right? You're saying we're in it for the long haul, is planting the seeds. And a lot of the coaches that I've worked with, I followed them for years and years and years, and they probably might not even know it. Like I liked a thing here and there, but maybe didn't even engage too much. And then it's not until something all of a sudden pops and I'm ready to go. That's, kind of how I've chosen, very instantaneously. There's like one other thing. It keeps like, it flies to the front of my mind and then goes out. It flies to the front. This is what I want to say. Creation for you is what will change your state. Because if you are creating for others, then it is codependent, right? But for me, when I create, it changes my energy. And it's literally what got me through COVID, I would say. A lot of meditation. And then luckily I was working from home at the VA, at the government, but I was very out of line with the job. Anyways, but creating TikToks every day, it's what saved me. So it's like creation energy is very, very healing. And so if you create simply for that, that's a gift.
Yeah. And I wish that people would say that more about their relationship with social media, because like there's almost this like weird, shameful love-hate relationship that people talk about with social media,
Yeah.
and like certainly like there are days where I feel like, ugh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be on my phone today.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I feel the same way. Like I feel like the writing that I produce, like I love that, like, I don't know, I'd say like 80% of my job is writing now, whether it's writing to create curriculum, writing to create stuff for social media. Um, and if we are devaluing it because it's on this particular platform, you know, like because it's not in the New York Times, or, like
Mm-hmm.
it it devalues the impact that it actually has on people's lives. You
Yeah.
know, I know that people working with you have been transformed by working with you. I know that people working with me have been transformed by that experience. And if the introduction is on social media because of a creative thing that I put out there, like I'm stoked on that. Like
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that I get to live in this era where that's even an option for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. And truly I am grateful for social to connect with so many people around the world that
Mm,
I wouldn't connect with. And
yeah.
for me, I had to learn the lesson early on to not create based on results, because initially my growth was fast and furious. And so there was
Mm,
a lot of motivation, which is finite resource motivation to create, because it was like, ooh,
mm,
this one got 1 million views, or you know what I mean? And like, it was just growth, growth, growth. And I was just like, and
yeah.
then something shifted. I just couldn't create that way anymore, because then I was still creating to get the viral video or whatever, and I had changed. And so when I started create differently, things kind of stalled out, and then I made a big U-turn and probably a couple pivots and started going in a different direction. And I'm just different now. So certainly that's not resonating with that same audience. And so probably for the past, I don't know, year, I would say my overall number has gone down, like on my TikTok and Instagram. And for a while, that was really defeating, because it was like, I'm not seeing the growth. For what purpose am I doing this? It's like, hello, you still have clients coming in the door. Like, it's still giving you something. So what if you could detach from the numbers? So truly, that was like real life experience that I've had to just, am I going to create no matter what's
Yeah.
going on there or what? And for
Yeah.
me, it's just every time that I take a break or pause, I'm called back to creation, because it
Yeah.
just changes me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if we can detach from that number, I mean, you and I have really different experiences on social media. For me, it's never been this like viral, like I've never hit anything that was like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe, it's always just been this like slow progress of like, a dozen followers a month, or I
Mm-hmm.
think like at most I've gotten like 250, 300 followers in a month, and because of that, it's never been about the numbers for me. It's always been about relationships,
Yeah.
which is why I feel like I've been able to have a successful business with like as little followership as I do,
Yeah.
is because it's always about like, hey, like we're in a relationship. Like we truly are in a relationship, and I value that relationship. And there are at least once a year, I will go through my newsletter list and Marie Kondo the shit out of it.
I love that. Yeah.
I will like go through and be like, cause you can actually like filter out and be like, okay, so if this person hasn't opened up an email of mine in the last like 10 times I've sent an email, they're not interested.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give them the
They're
favor.
pleasing.
Yeah. Or they're just like, it doesn't matter
Yeah, true.
to
Yeah.
them, like it just is filtered into nothing land for them. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, it's like, okay, I'm going to do you the favor of like taking you off my email list because we're not in alignment, and that's okay,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's just truly, especially for the entrepreneurs, it's not about the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
I've
but
seen,
people get fixated on it
yeah,
because society tells us that we need to be,
yeah, no, I
you
mean, and
know.
however you define success, whether it be financial fulfillment, truly for me, that's like priority, obviously abundance as well, but like fulfillment in the work, truly, because
Mm-hmm.
I just, every time I end a group call, I'm like, yep, this is what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
know it, right? The
Yeah.
facilitation is just so magical. It's not, it feels like you're getting facilitated at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I send my husband texts like at least a couple times a week where I'm like pinch me, like I get to do this, you know?
Totally.
And it sounds like you have that same kind of relationship with your work as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I recently with my current mastermind is actually I'm doing something different. It's voice note and text only, so it's on a WhatsApp channel. And it
Mm-hmm.
is with people who have been with me around, so they've been on calls and they're familiar, but
Mm-hmm.
I am loving that experience too, to just be kind of in their back pocket and like address energy as it comes up, and that's just
Mm-hmm.
been such a joy, like to create differently too. And just like, we're just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
again, also following what comes up, what's coming up for folks. Okay. What can we do to
Yeah.
shift it? And then
Yeah.
it just kind of keeps going
Yeah.
versus like call to call, which obviously I do calls too. And I love that
Yeah.
experience, but it's just nice to have these different ways of working with what works for
Yeah. And to me it's like that's another expression of your creativity,
you.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you're not just following a model of like what everybody else is doing out in the online space, you know. And something that I encourage all of my clients to do is like
Yeah.
don't don't copycat the thing. I mean, sure, if there's like structure in that like looks really compelling and makes sense, like don't invent the wheel. But you know, I have a client who's a tarot card reader right now, and she created this really beautiful book of like journaling prompts for every single one of the tarot cards. And then now she's going to like sell that. And part of that as a package is like you get group calls, you get some one on one
Oh,
work with
cool.
her. And it's like, what a beautiful offering, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that like came straight out of her creativity. So it's something that I think is such an important aspect of the coaching space that doesn't get talked about enough is like every aspect of your business gets to be creative if you
Yeah.
like think about it, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, I spent a long time going down all the strategy holes of business and really doing that hardcore of this reality. Like, what's the right strategy? And I was like, the right strategy is to listen to me and what I'm
Yeah.
excited to create and what fulfills me. And if it's an offer that there is no reference point for, then
Yeah.
how magical would that be? I mean, the iPhone, there was no reference point for that when that first came out. It
Mhm.
was new and unique, and now it's everywhere, So I definitely encourage my folks as well to, follow what they know, follow what they're
Mhm.
aware of, even if there is nothing else out there. And how does it get better than that? That's like the complete opposite of what they say. It's in business. It's like, well, if it's out there, then it's tried and true and it works. It's like, well, that's great. And there's like 1,000 of them. What else is possible? And like you're saying,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be this brand new thing, but with their energetic stamp on it, it's going to
Mhm.
create something totally different, because
Yeah.
I was burnt out every time I was trying to do it the other way.
Mhm. Yeah, same. Exactly the same.
Didn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I'm curious, do you know what your human design is?
I am a pure generator.
Mm.
Let's see. I sacral
Yeah.
authority. Okay. So,
Yeah.
and then a responder to respond,
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
self frustration. So I forget
Yeah.
what the numbers are, the split.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that makes sense because it's like so much of your content is like you responding to people's
Yes.
questions, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. And so
that's
that's
like
how I've,
totally by your design.
yeah, no, 100%. And so that's why I've like even sought to create my containers that way as well. So like the mastermind that way, although
Mm,
it is the content, so to speak, there is a masterclass series that goes with it and is about learning to trust you and following your intuition. And it's kind of what I offer is like, what is up for you? What's coming up?
yeah.
And let's
Yeah.
talk about it. So then people's questions. And it's great because I also have some manifestors in there. So they, initiate, which is, it's
Yeah.
like such a beautiful play. And then I've done that also with my office hours calls, which is the same idea. Hey, come on in, like the energy's up. And I was just talking about the anger because that's what's up. And so that's how the content is birthed and created, based on kind of the energy
Hmm.
that's up and your questions. And then that
Hmm.
feels really good and aligned for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, my dear, is there anything else that you feel like we haven't touched on that like you're like I need to just say this one last thing before we log off?
Trust you. Ask questions. Ask a lot of questions in service of getting in touch with what you're aware of, I would say, rather than coming to conclusion or needing to get the right answer. What if you asked your awareness what you know, what you knew, and followed that instead?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Thank you for having
We're going to
me.
have to plan something with like the three of us.
Yes,
since we've
100%.
talked, like Lindsay was kind of like a ghost guest.
I know. We're like, hi, we're talking about you. We love you.
But yeah, I hope that you'll return, and
absolutely.
thanks for putting out the work that you do. And please share how folks can find you.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So I would say mostly on IG and TikTok at Kreft's Couch. And that's everywhere. It's YouTube too, my website, Kreft's Couch. I have all sorts of things, work with folks one-on-one in my mastermind calls. So if you feel pinged, feel free to reach out.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.